Thank you very much, and thank you very much, QQI, for inviting me along for today's session. And it's great to be working with you again and the Academic Integrity Network in Ireland. It's much appreciated. At the outset, I'd probably say that I'm going to be playing, I think, the bad cop to Teddy's good cop. She will appreciate that reference, of course, given her background, which she might share with you a bit later on. And so what I'm going to be focusing on is some of the developments that have happened within UK and within Europe, if I may. So if I can have the first slide, please. Okay, so as Billy's mentioned, I'm a member of the QAA's advisory group on academic integrity. And what we have been doing over the last couple of years is updating our guidance in the UK, which was first published in 2017. What we have now is a second edition of the QAA Guidance, which was published in June of this year, so it's bang up to date. It was basically drafted by experts from the QAA and around the higher education institutions within the UK and also abroad. And I would point out that its focus from the 2017 edition has moved away perhaps from prevention to one of detection and addressing the issues and concerns of academic integrity and academic misconduct. So there has been a sea change in terms of the emphasis within the guidance. In the UK, it is, of course, guidance. It's not compulsory that the guidance is actually used. It is considered best practice to actually adopt the measures set out in the guidance. Next slide, please. Okay, so I use this slide to emphasise that fraud isn't new. It's been around for many, many years and centuries, and it's not going to go away. I didn't know that Teddy was going to be using Chinese references as part of her particular presentation, but here is my Chinese reference. It is an example of a vest used by candidates for the old-style Chinese civil service exams, in which you can see the candidate has placed their brushstrokes on the inside of the vest. And you could probably see there the brushstroke for crisis and danger. But it's simply to emphasise fraud, cheating in education and in professional life has been around for some time, and we're not going to actually change things overnight. Next slide, please. So what is education fraud? I want to make it clear at the outset, I'm not dealing with the definition of legal fraud here, but broadly speaking, what cheating or fraud means in education, in higher education in particular. As Billy mentioned, I'm a consultant expert with the Council of Europe, the isnt platform. And at the moment, we're looking at drafting a high-level policy in the area of education fraud. And we've broadly defined some of the key issues that member states are certainly reporting to us in relation to the challenges that they are facing. So yes, plagiarism is there in the list, and yes, so are essay mills, the contract cheating that Billy has referred to, and also Teddy's referred to. But there are other issues that are current and we are concerned about, and those relate to qualifications and accreditation. Qualifications and accreditation are being fraudulently created and used in relation to opportunities, and that includes enrolling at higher education institutions. So when we consider education fraud as higher education institutions, we don't simply want to focus on contract cheating or on plagiarism or on collusion, some of the more usual aspects of academic misconduct. But we need to be alive to other areas of education fraud as well. Teddy mentioned in her presentation what is going to be the next best thing. I mean, obviously contract cheating and essay mills was the next best thing, and I would perhaps suggest that the next big thing, not best thing, I should say, the next big thing in this area is probably online real-time answers to examinations and assessments, particularly with COVID-19 and the move by higher education institutions to online assessment. The ability of students to actually get real-time answers from third-party providers and services, I think, is a real concern. I don't necessarily think...
Michael?
Hello?
Michael, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The sound is a bit muffled. Can you get it louder by any chance? Make it louder, please, if possible.
I will try my best. Is that better?
That's a little better, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Right. So I've hopefully got the sound up a bit higher for you. Yes, so I think the next big thing is, as I said, real-time answers to online assessments. And with the move to COVID-19 assessments being online, I think that is a real concern going forward. And I don't think proctoring is necessarily the answer either. So next slide, please. So I think it's important to understand why.
I'm sorry, the sound is still bad.
Oh, I'm right on top of my iPad here.
Michael, maybe is your mic maybe towards the desk or something that it's not picking up your sound?
Okay, I'll work on that now. Is that better?
It's improving a little bit.
I'll have to hold it flat then. You might not see me. Okay, so this slide demonstrates why students commit education fraud. And really there are three reasons why that occurs. Opportunity, pressure, and rationalization. Now, opportunity will arise because of the nature of the assessment and the way we actually structure our assessments, which, you know, as I said, the move to online assessments, the move to takeaway assessments makes the opportunity for academic misconduct more prevalent. Rationalization occurs because students will probably rationalize everybody else is doing it, it's not illegal, and therefore I'm going to take opportunity of those services that are often directly targeted at students by third parties. And we need to understand that as part of the pressure, students are targeted directly to take advantage of these cheating services offered by third party companies, including essay mills. The other aspect of pressure is, of course, we have to look at the assessment diet of a student, and we have a responsibility of that, of course, in terms of making sure that the assessments students do in fact take are spread out as part of the assessment load, and that there isn't bunching of assessments. And so these three factors, I believe, play into why students commit education fraud. And as part of that pressure, students, of course, are under great pressure to succeed, as we know, especially given the employment prospects that may or may not exist at the moment as a result of COVID-19. Next slide, please. I think another aspect to pressure is this lack of confidence that students generally feel when they move into higher education from schools and further education colleges. In schools and perhaps in FE, they're used to a mode of learning and teaching in which learning is very much directed by the tutor or teacher. And of course, in higher education, that necessarily is not the case. Students are expected to undertake independent learning in their own right. And so transition may come as a culture shock. And as HE institutions, we need to understand that, address it, and support students in that transition into higher education. This lack of confidence they may feel moving into higher education, particularly now when many students have not been assessed recently. For example, in the UK, A-level students have not sat exams in June. All teaching stopped as a result of COVID-19 in March, and now they're expected to transition into higher education and to pick up in effect where they left off. Of course, that will cause a crisis of confidence. It will also affect students' mental health and well-being, which will also play into, I believe, a temptation towards academic misconduct. I think there is a relationship that needs to be explored between extenuating circumstances, mental health, well-being, and academic misconduct. It will play into, obviously, engagement with classes and retention in higher education. And I personally also believe there's a link between independent learning, ethical behaviour, and personal tutoring. I think the role of the personal tutor, that relationship that personal tutors have with students, has been a crucial one and will be even more so going forward. And it's down to that personal relationship where we have remote and blended learning to actually emphasise the importance of independent learning, what it means, and how we can best support students in terms of their academic performance. Next slide, please. So in relation to personal tutoring, I've introduced this slide to make you aware of a relatively new organisation which has come on the scene in the UK. and that's the United Kingdom Academic Advisory and Tutoring Association, UCAT. It has its own website, and I've made reference to it here. And there's a very good number of very useful resources available on this site to help with personal tutoring and support of students in terms of their academic performance. A lot of the resources are freely available. Some are available to members only, but there's around 20 institutions now in the UK that are members institutionally of UCAT, in addition to personal membership. And I just want to make a plug here that in June as well, we also launched as part of UCAT a professional recognition scheme for personal tutors, so that those who are involved in personal tutoring can get professional recognition for that, similar to perhaps HEA fellowship, which some of you may be more familiar with. Next slide, please. So on the issue of lack of student confidence, there has been research done in relation to transition to higher education, and that research demonstrates that students are more likely to continue to adopt learning and coping mechanisms they developed within school or further education when they transition into university. Now, we need to question and explore with students whether those coping mechanisms will actually be of value to them in a higher education setting. And this is where I think the role of a personal tutor or academic mentor becomes very important. So we need to explore what practices are going to support and help students as part of their academic journey through higher education, and which differ from those strategies and mechanisms developed within school. Next slide, please. So the QAA, before they issued their second edition of the guidance in June of 2020 this year, undertook a survey of higher education institutions and also members within those higher education institutions. And as a result of that survey, what plays into the QAA guidance is a need for timely information for students. This is crucial in addressing the threat to education fraud or threat of education fraud. That timely information can be given both institutionally, but also through the personal tutor structures within higher education institutions. And this is another reason why I believe academic mentoring and personal tutoring is crucial in addressing the issues of fraud and also academic integrity. That survey made clear that it's important not simply to front load information, to make the information timely and available throughout, in particular the first term of higher education life. But perhaps worryingly, what the survey found was that awareness of contract cheating, awareness of academic fraud, did not really actually permeate through to all members of academic staff, or indeed all staff within the institution. And it seemed to stop at those who were responsible within an institution for ensuring academic quality. I think Teddy and Billy have already made the point that what we do need here is a whole community approach to address issues of academic misconduct and support academic integrity. And without that, any efforts that we make are going to be, I think, undermined in terms of what it is we're seeking to do. Next slide, please. So please don't rely upon front loading as part of induction. I think it's been well said that induction is not an event, it is a process. And it is a process that takes place through the entirety of the first year of university life. And so key messages need to be repeated throughout that period. And I think we need to consider as higher education institutions what our induction process is going to look like, when we're going to give information, how we're going to give that information. And it is my personal belief that we need to involve students in that, especially our students' union, and involve students in writing the material that we are going to actually give to students. So it's written in a clear, accessible and transparent way. And we need to have direct discussions with students at the outset in our personal tutor meetings around the issues of academic integrity and issues of academic misconduct. In particular, we need to warn them that it is likely they will be directly targeted by third-party companies offering their services. And if that is the case, they should not worry. They are not being singled out. It is likely that all students will get these directly targeted advertising, and they are best placed to come and speak to their personal tutor about any concerns or worries they may have. We need to develop a good, healthy relationship with our students such that they can discuss these issues with us. Next slide, please. So the importance of effective student support has increased as a result of COVID-19 and the move to blended learning and digital assessment. Students are in these circumstances going to feel more alienated from their academic community. There are not going to be many students on campus. Their social and support networks will no doubt have changed from school. And so where there is contact with staff, we have to make sure that that contact is meaningful and is designed to support students. And when we talk about students, it's important to consider that students are not a homogeneous body. They are individuals in their own right, and individual students will have their own needs in terms of their support and how best we can support them in terms of their academic performance. And again, I would make the point that this is best addressed individually in academic mentor and personal tutor sessions. So this relationship is going to be crucial and critical to their development of students as confident, independent learners in the current COVID-19 situation we find ourselves in. Next slide, please. So what do we mean by independent learning? Do we know? Can we convey that to students? It's certainly a concept that perhaps they may not be familiar with from school. And the research demonstrates there is no single preferred definition of directed independent learning, but it's something that is crucial to success within a higher education setting. So they will have passed through an education system which is basically largely directed their learning, largely directed the form of assessment and preparation for that assessment, and that is not going to be replicated within higher education. Students need to understand that. We are there to support, we're there to guide students, but we need students to reflect upon what it is they need by way of support and guidance and have a meaningful conversation with their personal tutor around this issue. So we do need to consider how we're going to address personal tutoring, academic mentoring, and what we mean by independent learning within those sessions before we actually discuss these with students. And this is going to require an institutional approach as well as at a programme and department level. Next slide, please. So any information support around contract cheating as part of a personal tutoring session and in relation to academic integrity is actually going to be crucial. We also need to advise students how it is we will actually detect plagiarism. We need to have an honest conversation about the text matching software, for example, Turnitin, that we may adopt as part of an institution, and how that actually works. And so students can understand, using perhaps Turnitin as a demonstration, how they can best actually frame their academic work so that text matching software does not inadvertently catch any inadvertent plagiarism in relation to their work. They do need to understand how these systems work, not so they can sidestep them, but how best they can present their work when they do actually submit it electronically. Next slide, please. Peer support here, I think, is crucial. This is where the work of the Students' Union comes in, because students tend to listen to other students. They may not listen to us, but they will listen to other students. So knowing the opinion and attitude of the student union and also other students to academic misconduct and issues of academic integrity will be important. They will listen to each other. And so it's important to involve students in setting strategy, in setting institutional guidance, in drafting appropriate rules, policies and regulations. And that will have, in my view, the most impact in relation to the message we're trying to get across to students. Have students' unions champion academic integrity programs throughout the institution and also support the International Day of Action, which Billy has also already referred to. Next slide, please. So some key action points from the QAA guidance: early information, reinforce at appropriate times throughout courses, include that information both centrally and in student handbooks, place a positive focus on academic integrity, a point Teddy has already well made, not just a negative focus on misconduct. Be aware that students are individuals and therefore have individual needs in terms of support, and make students aware that where they are studying on accredited courses or courses that leave professional status, that academic misconduct can have a serious impact not just on the award, but on whether or not they will be able to actually practice within their chosen profession as well. Next slide, please. SA Mills offer products at all qualification levels, so simply don't focus on undergraduate programs and undergraduate students. Postgraduate programs, both taught and research students on those programs are also targeted as well. Give written information to students on the importance of academic integrity and consequences of cheating at appropriate times. Provide information that focuses specifically on implications of using third-party assistance in cheating, because the outcomes, if proven in a academic misconduct panel, will often be more serious than perhaps collusion or plagiarism. Be clear about measures we use to detect cheating. I've referred to text matching software, but there are other measures as well that we need to make clear to students. And you might want to consider, if you've not already done so, adopting a robust whistleblowing policy that's been developed with student engagement as a way of detection as well. Next slide, please. We need to consider appropriate staff resourcing. Academic integrity and academic misconduct issues are time intensive, which means appropriate staff resourcing by HE institutions to enable us as academic members of staff to do our job properly. We need to make sure that we continue with CPD in relation to academic regulations. And of course, by participating today, you're basically demonstrating your commitment to that continuing professional development and training. And we need to make sure that we as staff are familiar with the investigation process within our institutions so we can properly advise our students on what might be involved in that should we need to as personal tutors. Next slide, please. I just want to make brief reference here to the SNED platform of the Council of Europe. As indicated at the outset, we are currently drafting a high-level policy document with explanatory memorandum, which will be placed to member states next year on a range of academic fraud issues, not just simply SA Mills and contract cheating. And so you will expect some sort of information coming out from the Council to individual member states and, of course, to relevant qualification and quality bodies such as the QAA in due course. So please watch out for that. Next slide. What we will do, and if you look at the ETINAD platform website available from the Council of Europe, we will on a regular basis share information and best practices and also address on that website what we are doing in order to challenge corruption across European member states, of which within the Council there are 47. We're not limited to the current 27 within the EU. And you'll find that if you look at the website, the focus is very much, as Teddy's focus was, on creating a positive environment in relation to academic integrity, not simply addressing or countering education fraud. Next slide. And just to emphasize the community approach that Billy and Teddy have already referred to, we very much take this approach in Europe as well. And so we expect initiatives to be developed by member states and those involved in higher education institutions within those member states, which are brought forward up to plenary session and other sessions of the Council of Europe to discuss and eventually to adopt and find its way into Council of Europe policy. So this is not about the Council of Europe dictating to member states or institutions. This is very much a whole institution and inclusive approach to development of policy within Europe, which will then best reflect on members' concerns and best support academic integrity across member states. I think next slide. And that is the conclusion to my presentation.